every Chinese who either experienced or has a knowledge of the Chinese Cultural Revolution would clearly see the similarities, and we are all terrified. First of all, let me give you a brief intro into the Chinese Cultural Revolution in case some of you are not familiar with it. Mao carried out two revolutions. The first one was an armed insurrection to overthrow the nationalist government to establish the communist power in 1949. The second one was the infamous Chinese Cultural Revolution in 1966. Although there were many purges and social political movements in between, the Great Chinese Cultural Revolution was Mao's last full-scale and the most ruthless revolution for power grab. The aim was to secure his absolute power by removing his political enemies within his own Communist Party. The Cultural Revolution lasted for 10 years until the death of Mao in 1976. When all the dust settled, China's economy was in its knees, some 20 million people died, and the Chinese civilization destroyed. The Chinese Cultural Revolution is super relevant to us today because it was during the Cultural Revolution Mao utilized and played out the Marxist tactics to the extreme. I was a first grader when the Cultural Revolution started. When Mao died, I was 17, working in the fields to receive my re-education from the peasants, as so many other high school graduates from cities. I did it for 3 years. I can say that I have a full experience of the Cultural Revolution. In many ways, the Cultural Revolution really started at the conception of CCP in 1921. It never stopped. Revolution against traditional culture is in the DNA of communism. And the radical left also carries that same destructive DNA. I don't think there is a disagreement that Marxism is communism. The question is whether Wokism is communism. I can answer that question with absolute certainty. Yes, it is. I am referring specifically to the tactics. The tactics the left has been using to tear down America is undoubtedly communist. My conclusion is not based on my research or scholarly studies. It is based on my lived experience. The methodology is simple. If you were bitten once by a snake, when it happened to you again, you will have no doubt that you have just bitten by a snake. There is a lot to talk about the cultural Marxism. I will just focus on division, deconstruction, and destruction. Let's just call them the 3 Ds. Division is one of the hallmarks of Marxism. The classic Marxism used class to divide. It was used successfully in Russia, in China, and many other underdeveloped countries. Mao used class to divide the entire Chinese population into 2 camps. Black camp for class enemies, those are the oppressors, and red camp for what Mao simply termed people, for the oppressed. Everyone knew which camp they belonged to and who the enemies were. For all official papers, one was required to fill in the question of class origin. Compare with the radical left in America. Mao's oppressor and oppressed division was very crude, although very effective. Unlike Mao, the left is dealing with a free people. They had to come up with tactics that were much more sophisticated and slogans that no one could disagree with. The left uses race to divide Americans. CRT is tailor-made for America. But one can simply replace race with another divisive category. Class, yes, that is still Bernie Sanders' favorite topic. They use gender, they use sexuality, and now the entire profession was demonized, such as law enforcement. The newest way to divide people is vaccination status. But the most insidious way to divide people is intersectionality. It divides people into endless subgroups and set them up against each other. The aim is to tear down the very fabric of our society. I call the left's brand of Marxism with American characteristics. I'm playing with words here because CCP calls its version of socialism socialism with Chinese characteristics. I just talked about what was used to divide people. I would like to talk a little bit about how it was used. After the land-owning class was thoroughly destroyed, Mao needed new enemies. Class warfare was his weapon to gain power. He would need use it again to maintain power. So he made class hereditary. In addition, he expanded the class enemy category to include counter-revolutionaries, rightists, bad influencers, spies, traitors. The last one he added was intellectuals. And all these labels also become hereditary. If your parents were class enemies, you are too, at birth. One could not escape the assigned class label, except in public spaces where no one knew each other because we all look alike as Chinese. CRT, on the other hand, is a much more potent weapon for division. As long as you are white, you are oppressor. There's no way you can hide your racial identity. Relation was also a way to categorize people. In Mao's China, if your relatives were class enemies, you were too, or at least considered enemy suspect. This is also happening in America now. The stepmother of the Atlanta officer who shot Richard Brooks was fired from her job because she was considered a reputation risk. I won't be surprised that we'll see more of this if we won't stop the woke madness. Guilty by association is a common practice by CCP. Purge was seldom directed at just one person. In one case, after a provincial official was purged, some 600 people working under him, including their families, were all deemed as class enemies. What awaited them was demotion, exile, jail, or death. This one is familiar to all of us by now. For example, all Trump supporters are now deemed to be white supremacist or insurrectionist by the left. Guilty by past words or deeds. In Mao's China, no matter how obedient one was to CCP, one still could end up as a class enemy. All they needed was to find out you said something or did something in the past that was considered politically incorrect. They have a special label for this. It's called historic counter-revolutionary. Again, we can see this tactic played out here in America. Governor Northam of Virginia was called a racist today because he wore blackface in college. With today's social media, it is much easier to find out who said and did what and when. No one will be safe. Reporting on each other is another well-used communist tactics to divide people. During the Cultural Revolution, people were encouraged to report on each other. One gets awards for reporting on others. It was a great way to do virtual signaling and to demonstrate that you are woke. The result is that friends turn friends in, neighbors turn neighbors in, children turn parents in. This includes the children of Liu Shaoqi, president of China. After he was purged, his children publicly denounced him. They had to. This is one thing that I never thought would happen in America, but now it is happening all around us. We see children go to social media calling their parents racist. In Loudoun County School, they have bias reporting systems, and Biden asked Americans to report radicalized friends and family to the government. What does this do is to make everyone fearful, and everyone self-censor themselves to avoid being called out. When people are fearful, they are no longer free. They are actually being controlled. It is not enough to just divide people. The real game is to destroy the existing system. Deconstruction is the process of casting doubts on all traditions, all social norms, all institutions and laws. Destruction is the next step. These are Mao's own words. Only through chaos can a new order be created. Mao was the creator of the chaos. Mao started the Cultural Revolution by unleashing his Red Guards. These were the thoroughly indoctrinated youth from universities and public schools, including elementary schools. With Mao's open support, the Red Guards abolished the law enforcement and court systems. No one could intervene and dare to stop them. This is the Chinese expression of what the Red Guard did. 打,砸,抢,烧, translated as violence, rioting, looting, and burning. The Red Guards did so much damage and killed so many people, and yet their crimes were never prosecuted. Today, the Cultural Revolution is not allowed to be discussed in China, and the school children were taught that the Cultural Revolution was an anti-corruption campaign. In America, we also see our own Red Guards. The Democratic Party leadership and the media openly backed the social justice warriors and rioters. They knew this. That's why they were able to terrorize our cities and communities. I had to include this slide to show how similar the Communist Party and the radical left actually are. Both love to use graffiti to broadcast their political messages and to deface our cities and communities. Cancel culture is a big topic. What is cancel culture? To me, it is the canceling of the so-called oppressors' culture. During the Cultural Revolution, Mao ordered the Red Guards to cancel the 4 olds: old ideas, old tradition, old custom, and old habits. In short, the traditional culture and civilization of China. The Red Guards tore down Buddhist and Confucius statues and temples. They destroyed any historic relics. They went door to door to raid homes, to smash or burn anything old, they could lay their hands on.